Part 3, BMW E39 M5. This is my diary of my car, what's been going on with it and what's going to happen in the future with it. Well, parts 1 and 2, if you didn't catch those, we talked about the mechanical parts that we needed to fix. They have been fixed. And in the second part, we were talking about how we're going to get this car home, get it into a small double garage somewhere. My friends kindly let me get it up on an actual stand, steam clean and ready for our next part. So the next part, what is it all about? Well, rust. We've got to manage this rust. We can't do any more work on this vehicle until this car is rust free, and we are absolutely certain that it's not going to rust again anytime soon in the future. There was a bit of rust treatment that was done to it previously by the welder, but since then we've removed that and we're going to be using this product to do the rust treatment. This is like a conversion product. It helps to convert the rust and leaves it with a paintable surface. So what is it? Well, this is called Furtan. It comes in different sizes, 5 litre, 1 litre, comes in smaller bottles as well. The application of it is pretty simple. You need to key the surface. Remember to use a red scotch or green or grey, depending where you are. You need to degrease the surface, so you need to be using a silicone remover or panel wipe. Use a quality one, that way you can be sure that there's no grease there. Mask off the areas, use a good tape, 3M, a good masking film as well. I use Top Gun. If you're in the UK, you might be familiar with that. It's a paintable side, and once you've painted it, remember to let it dry for 24 to 48 hours. Couple of tips when you're using this stuff. I mean, if it's cold, I pre-soaked this bottle of Furtan in a hot water bucket for about an hour, so it would warm the material up. And the other thing I did was let the heater stay on for about an hour in the workshop, so it would heat the panels up and give those panels a bit of heat. The warmer the panels, the more chance that you've got of this surface, this Furtan adhering and getting a good bond with that surface, and it sort of helps it trigger a faster drying time, I think. So use those products, that I'm recommending. They're all available in the UK. If you're somewhere else, remember, okay, you could probably find something similar. The most of these products work, they work worldwide. I've got some wire wheels there as well that were just up a second ago. Use those to remove any thick bits of rust or surface rust. Remember that you need to be wearing safety goggles and gloves when you are doing that. So once you've applied this Furtan, what happens next? Well, once it's dried, it goes black, and anywhere it hasn't gone or adhered to, it leaves a brown surface. So what you need to do then is wipe that off with a damp cloth. Once that's wiped off, then you are ready for painting. But before we do any painting, we've got some metal work to do, and that really concerns the arches. You might have noticed in part 1 where I showed you my wheels and the clearance. I don't know if it's actually part 1 or part 2, but I've got a set of BBS RCs on this car. They're lovely rims. The only thing is that they catch the arches. I noticed that they were catching the rear arches, and on the odd occasion they would catch the front arch as well. I haven't really driven this car. As I said, I've probably done about 50-60 miles in total since I bought this car, but I'm worried that if it's got a full load of fuel and full passengers and luggage in the boot, it's probably going to rub the tyre away. So the first thing that we need to do is get those arches rolled. So you can see there, I bought this arch roller. They're quite cheap. Once you've got it attached to the hub, all you do is you move that caster wheel backwards and forwards, following the shape of the arch. It's normally the top section that you're going to be working on. If you've seen videos of this on the net, they do make it look a lot easier than it actually is. It does take a lot of force. If it's cold, the metal won't be bending too easily, and if it's double skinned like rear arches sometimes are, then you're in for a bit more of a surprise. So be careful with it, but it can be done, and it will cost you, a fraction of the price of someone else charging you to come out and do it themselves. So that was that part. We've got all that sorted. The next part really is then to move on to the bodywork and start looking at where these dents are and what kind of things we've got to remember to fix as we go along. Now, one of the things is obviously when you're painting a car, the more stuff that you start to do onto it, do to the bodywork, especially if it's filler work and paint work and rubbing things down, the car can get really dusty. And the problem with that is that you can lose track of where your dents are. So one of the things I would like to kind of suggest is obviously mark your dents out. Use a chalk marker or some sort of Sharpie. I've got this little white wax pen there that I use, that George left in the garage, and that gives me a chance to just quickly go around and check where all the dents were. Sometimes, right, dents can be really difficult to see, and one of the things I would say is when you're looking for dents, use the light, follow the light through the panel. That should show you any undulations. Or another trick is to lie down on the floor and look upwards onto the panel. I don't know if you've ever had your car on a ramp and looked up onto it. You probably can see a lot more damage and imperfections in the paint than you would normally do looking at it on face value. And my car, it's got the other added illusion where it's so low, it's very difficult to see the bottoms of the car. So it's like a concealing thing, but that is no excuse for it to be in a bad condition. So you're going to get that minted up. I'm just pointing out there those long dents. That little picture at the top looks like a skateboard, doesn't it? So that was like it wasn't dents, it was, best way I could describe it is I reckon that cars had previous PDR, paint dent removal, and when you look up on the panel you could see certain areas where it looked like high spots. It didn't look like dents. So that's what sort of made me think there maybe had been previous dents been knocked out and the high spots hadn't been knocked back down. So yeah, pretty easy. I'm going to go back round, just give those a little tap using a very sharp point on a plastic kind of hammer, just see if I can knock those little dents back, and then I'm going to go back with a block sander, a long block, block that whole panel to see if there's anything else that I missed. So things are looking pretty good, and we're going ahead of schedule at the moment with our repair work. We thought it was going to take a lot longer. So when things are going good, always there's some sort of hiccup. This car has presented as a new one. As you can see, the rear door handle is out, but this front door handle is still in. And that's because the front window is all the way down, so we cannot get to the back of that handle. Now, the next thing would be to do would be to go to the boot and open that and see if we can get the battery reconnected, because it was disconnected when we first started work for safety reasons, and we'll be okay. But E38s and E39s have a problem, and that really is down to the boot lock release mechanism. They have a problem where the key won't turn enough, or it doesn't feel like it's turning enough to trigger the lock. So this is what's happening with this car, and now we cannot get into the boot. So looking on the net, there's different ways to do it. You could drill a hole in there, you could cut out a panel of the boot, you could go through the ski hatch or make a hole in the back there. Anything where there's making holes, I'm not really a good fan of that. So George came up with a good idea. He said that if we put a jump pack on the battery, we might be able to trigger the key and then release the boot. Great. But if we do that, then it could end up with us really triggering a warning lamp on the dashboard for the airbag light, and that's something that we don't want to do, because that means that we'll have to go somewhere and get that taken off. I don't think my little diagnostics thing will be able to, remove that. Sort of getting used to it. It's given me a lot of gifts recently, isn't it? So got a few things to think about. I will be getting back into that boot. If it means that I'm going to have to cut a hole in it, I'll just simply go and get another tailgate from somewhere else and paint it inside and out. So that really then moves us on to the next part, which is those weather strips that stop rain going down the inside of the doors. Taking those off after all those years, 20 years of being on there. They kinked, and that means that we'll have to go to BMW and get 4 more. So I've got 4 in order, de-chromed. It was apparently originally silver chrome finish on there, but I'm going to keep it the way it is. I prefer de-chrome. I don't want too much blinginess on there. I'd rather have it looking subdued and subtle than in your face. So that's that part of the way. The next thing that we need to do is start filling these dents and getting some filler on there, giving that a chance to dry. So we're going to be using some U-Pole filler that I've bought. I've got 2 different types that I'm going to be using. I'll show you those in a second. and we'll work our way, as I said before, from the back to the front, and hopefully see if we can get some filler on there. So this one here is Dolphin Glaze. I'll put a little link up there. It's about 10-11 pound. Best way to describe this is somewhere a midway house between liquid primer and filler. So I find it's a bit more runnier than normal stopper. I used to use Top Stop Gold. I used a few other ones as well. So this is going to be my first time using this Dolphin Glaze. I'll be applying it using a spreader. Before you use any of these products, make sure you mix them up. And just showing you here also the filler that I've been using so far, which is U-Pol D. It's a fine metallic polyester filler. It's about £24-25 for a little kind of tub like that. So you can get a much bigger tub for and much more in volume for a lot less, but as you can see here, it does leave a lovely finish and it does feather in pretty well. So yeah, no problems using that. I only had one issue with it on one day. I haven't got to that video yet in making it, but I didn't put too much harder in there. It would have probably gone off in it if the weather was hot, but it got to a point where it hadn't gone hard by a day and a half, and I just ended up taking it all off. So that cost me a lot of time, that did. But this is what happens with these jobs sometimes. You can't let something go, you've got to take it back and do it properly. And that's what costs you your time sometimes. So you can hear the see here the application of this product. It's left a nice smooth surface. We've already given this like a one coat here. I'm not really going to put too much on there until I get that rear door bottom panel and rub that back to metal so that I can really level this out properly and get this all straightened up. I've given it a little coat inside there as well, which has left a nice smooth finish. After I've done that, then I'll be using the U-Pol glaze and giving that a chance to dry off, maybe overnight before I come back and give it a proper flat. So grades of paper that I've been using, well, for production, if it's something that I'm just trying to get a rough shape with, and I know it's not going to be a fine panel, you can use 40, 60 or 80. But where the panel doesn't really require too much dent repair and it's just simply covering the very slightest of indentations, then I suggest that you probably start with something like 100, 120 and work your way up to somewhere with 320 before you go and primer. Be careful, don't rush things. If you haven't done bodywork before, it takes a hell of a lot rubbing down to get something perfect. So my suggestion would be try not to work on the car as a whole item. Don't even work on a side as a whole item. Work panel by panel, and even better than that, work section by section. Each part where the swage line divides up another part of the panel, use that as a way of working through and making sure you do not miss anything. The worst thing is where you get to a stage of paint and then realise that there's a dent that you missed. So yeah, we all do it from the start. These are tips that I'm going to offer you. These are mistakes that I made so that hopefully you don't have to make the same mistakes. So you can see me there, I'm dashing around the camera there. I'm trying to show you a few micro blisters and bits and pieces. It's just so hard to see in paint when you're not there in person. But I can assure you that when you're there, it is a lot more prominent and you can spot it, especially in this type of light. It wasn't that evident when it was outside in normal sunlight. It's just when it's inside under that kind of luminescent light, it does show a lot of defects. So front arch is all done. We've done the back. I think we're now ready to get some panels back to bare metal, get this filler work done and get ourselves a bit closer to then being able to primer and start getting this side painted off. You can see there the workshop's getting a bit messy. Obviously doing this filler work is a dusty old business, so do remember wear gloves, wear a face mask, and don't overdo it. It's a strenuous job. Make sure you're comfortable before you start, and if you can't get one bit right, walk away from it, go and do something else, come back to that later on and you'll probably suss it out straight away. Don't just stand there rubbing away hoping that the shape is going to come. Sometimes you really need to see what's happening, and you don't catch it the first time you do it always. So remember, take your time. These things, they're not something that you can do in a few days, you know, especially if you're trying to do something properly, you know, if it's a commercial job and it's just a quick in and out, then yeah, of course. But if you're like me and you're at home on your own doing it, you know, don't rush it, take your time, enjoy it. You know, once you lose your enthusiasm for something like this, you probably won't feel like doing it, you know, so it will just happen slowly. And if you look at what I've done in the last 6 days, you can see here, and now we're all rubbed back. We've got a few areas where it was exposed to dents. That's just taking off the key of the paint, but I'm going to be running this all over now with a block sander. What I'm pointing out there is how to identify the low spots. So you can see where it's rubbed through the metal, the silvery bit, that is the high area, and then anything that's around that area, they are the lower areas. And normally you can see there in between, sometimes there's a line, or we've got a low area in between that part and that part there. So that will probably end up taking a slight skimmer filler to get that back to straight, and then you've got the primer filler that will go on top of that. That will also build, you know, your surface and be able to give you a flat back and give you a, you know, a super straight surface. It was sort of, I couldn't really tell what it was there, but there wasn't really straight on that part, so I took that part back as well. I'm standing here looking at this now, you can see where we are. So the rear quarter, that needs doing. The front wing, that's going to need doing. This door, well, the middle section needs doing, and that rear door, the bottom section doing. So what was going to be maybe just a blend to get me near to summer and paint the thing properly, pretty much not, it's a non-go at that one. It's going to have to be painted, and it's going to have to be painted fully, I suppose, on both sides. The boot lid definitely is doing, the rear needs doing. The bumpers I really haven't checked properly yet, but I'm hoping I can get away with them. The roof I'm alright with, and the bonnet I'm okay with as well at the moment. But I sprayed a quick spray card the other day ago, and I realised it was a bit lighter. Sorry, the paint on the car was lighter than the actual spray card. So yeah, it's a new worry. So I'm thinking like maybe go and buy, you know, 4 or 5 litres of paint. That way I've got enough for all insides and outs. And if there's anything later on, I have the exact shade. Quality of paint that I'm going to use, well, I think I'm going to go for something like PPG, ICI, or Spice, Heco, or something like this. Or Standox or Sickins, you know, any of those manufacturers, they're good enough. Primers wise, you know, I've got dual primer that I've got there. I'll use that, I think, because, you know, it gives a fairly good build. I've already had a chance to use that. I've got some cheaper Roberto clear coat, but I'm probably going to get something a better grade. It's alright for quick jobs, but for this one I'm probably going to use Standox or Sickins or Lazarette, just to make sure it's got a lovely sheen when I'm finished. So join me for next time, part 4, where we were talking about preparing for primer and applying some other sealers and rust prevention. Thank you for watching.